This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. There was a book that came out decades ago. Sometimes people still refer to this book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. That's, fine book, nothing wrong with it. Doesn't go into deeper detail and doesn't physically and figuratively hold your hand through the birthing process. It also doesn't look at the sacred aspect of that. Think about that. The creation of life. It's pretty sacred, pretty amazing. We're going to talk with a birth educator and doula today that provides that insight and answers a lot of those questions that you don't even know where to ask. And it's so great to have her back with us. Jasmin is on the program, and I want to say the name of your practice, but I want to make sure I get it right, so I'm going to have you do it. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And yes, my practice is Oxomohco Birth and Bodyworks.
And what does that mean?
Oxomohco is a Mexican native word in our language of Nahuatl, which means it refers to the feminine energy required to create life.
And there's the spiritual side of things. Beautiful. Let's go basic, maybe fundamental here. You are a birth educator, but also a doula. Essentially, what is a doula?
So a doula is a support person, someone that supports you through fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And there are doulas that have different specialties that sometimes they might focus on just one of the aspects in regards to your reproductive health, right? And the way that they show up for you kind of depends on what your family needs. If you are needing some education, understanding your options, maybe access to resources, or like you mentioned perfectly earlier, helping you direct the questions that come up. You have no idea who this question is for. Who do I talk to about breastfeeding? Who do I talk to about soothing my baby and learning how to change a diaper? And your doula really helps you understand who to ask these questions to, and potentially your doula is the specialist on this topic and can truly help you hands-on with whatever it is that your family is encountering throughout this journey.
Do you find that this is very important because most delivery rooms, you have limited time with the doctor, even the nurse, it's in, they're out, they come back, you don't really have that one-on-one time. You can't ask those questions. Before you know it, you have an epidural and you weren't maybe even planning to get one, things like that. Do you find that the doula is essentially your advocate?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times it's understanding what is happening, why it's happening, and understanding how to communicate with your medical team so that you can be able to develop the birth experience that you want while understanding and staying safe and healthy, but also respecting your wishes, right? And being able to understand between, am I being coerced or pushed into making this decision, or is this something that I truly want to do, right? And I think you said it perfectly of like, we are that continuous support person. We don't work for the hospital. We don't work for your OB. We work directly with the family, which means that they could hire us at any time in the pregnancy or at any time in any part of their journey. And we are that same person that's with them throughout the entire experience. So usually our sessions are anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours, whereas, you might be with your OB, with your nurse, or with any medical staff. You might be with them for 5, 15, 20 minutes. And it's very in and out, just like you mentioned, right? And a doula is there consistently. That's your support person. That's your turn-to person throughout the entire experience. And we don't just come in and out of your experience for a couple of minutes.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be in the delivery room. Let's say, you work with people anywhere on the planet, essentially. Somebody could be 5 states away and have you on a Zoom. But prior to that, there's been that connection, that communication, that support leading up to the birth of the baby, right?
For sure. You definitely create a relationship, build that relationship and that connection to fully understand your clients and the families that you're working with, fully understand their desires, their goals, what their situations are, so that you can be able to help them and gear them up with the proper tools so that they can have the best birth experience possible. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in the room with them. It has actually everything to do with the preparation. And I think that's a lot of like where the miscommunication happens of there's this idea that doulas kind of take over and they replace,
Mm.
someone in your support team, or they replace nurses. A lot of times there's a lot of pushback in some hospitals of like not wanting doulas in the room because there's this misunderstanding that we're there to replace somebody, right? And that's actually not the case at all, especially because we're not medical professionals, right? We don't have any type of medical background. There might be some people that do, but generally speaking, the title of doula does not have a medical background, right? So we're there to really enhance the experience rather than take over and replace someone in the room. So sometimes partners have this standoffish feeling of like, what do we need a doula in the room for if you have me, right? But we're actually mostly there for the partners. But also it has everything to do with the preparation before we even get to the birth, because it's pretty hard for people to learn new things when they are in a lot of discomfort. They're not really present. They're very much in their body, moving through contractions, trying
Mm.
to move through the process of labor and trying to learn new things in that moment. It's not the best time to do that, right? So it has everything to do with what we go over during the pregnancy and the preparation of, okay, I know what to expect. I know what's going to come, and I already know what vocabulary is going to be used in the room. Medical lingo is already something that's a foreign language to many folks that don't have a medical background. So now you're going through the experience of receiving your baby. The medical staff is speaking amongst themselves in the room, and you are feeling like something is wrong. What are they talking about? What's wrong with my baby? And there may actually be nothing wrong. It's just the medical team speaking amongst themselves and in their lingo that feels scary, right? So we learn those things beforehand so that you don't get scared and nervous, anxious when you're in the moment.
Now, we're talking about supporting the mother to be, but you also support the other parent and those around as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's a lot of, you know, mom is going through all of these sensations in their body. And the people around her are usually trying to get her to the hospital or make sure she's safe and, things around her are working well, right? Something as simple as changing the mood in the room with the lighting. And it's such a simple shift. And I have this happen almost all the time. They tell me, I want the room to be mellow, I want low lighting. And then we jump on a video call when they're in labor and the lights are all on. So when I'm talking to them, I'm reminding their partner, turn off the lights, let's get labor moving,
Hmm.
right? And so it's a lot of instruction, a lot of guidance, a lot of reminders, and kind of homework tools for the primary partner to know how to support the environment so that they can feel like active participants in the experience. Because a lot of times when your body is not going through it, I get people that they're like, what am I even there for? I'm not even doing anything. I feel very helpless. How can I help in this experience, right? And because they don't have something to do, they feel very out of place. So when you work
Mm.
with a doula, the doula helps you understand how can you really be a part of this experience, because oftentimes this is an experience for both parents. Right? This is that special moment that you're going to celebrate year after year. You may have a birthday party every year. This is such a special moment, whether it's your first baby or your fifth baby. This is the first time you get to meet this new human in your life and your family and welcome them in. That we want both parents to be active participants and, in a sense, have something to do and understand that their contribution makes a big difference in the birth experience and in the birth outcome.
This is so unique in what you offer and what you do. Tell us your journey, Asmin. Where did this all begin for you?
Yeah, I love sharing this story because I was actually 7 years old and I have four sisters and I am child number four of five. And I remember my sister being pregnant with her first son. This was my oldest sister, first nephew, and she had a very big belly. And she would always complain about her lower back hurting her. And I remember thinking, this is like a core memory of mine where we were all in the room and she was telling my mom how her back was hurting and her belly was hanging out. It was very, very big. And I asked her, isn't there something you could wear to support your belly? And she gave me this elaborate answer about how she couldn't put something on because it could hurt the baby and the baby needs to be able to move around. And I remember very clearly that not sitting well with me and feeling like, I don't think that's right. And interestingly enough, now that I've been doing this work for about 10 years, actively, full time, um, I learned that I was right. At 7 years old, I was completely right about my sister being able to wear something to minimize her lower back pain. And
Wow.
that was the first like connection of there's something here, right? And there was different moments throughout my life that like brought me back to this. And so that was the first one. The second one that happened is um, I remember having to learn about the caste system and having to do a research project on my own family of what did my grandparents and great grandparents do, and what should I technically be doing, right? If we're following that system. And I learned that the women in my family, the women in my lineage, were home birth midwives, traditional midwives back in our home in Mexico. And so when I learned that, I was so mind blown. And mind you, I was in elementary school learning this. And ever since then, I always felt this like connection of there's something there, right? And at first, I had this idea that I wanted to have 12 children like my grandmother. I learned very quickly that that was not the case, and that was not attainable, right? And as time passed, I was able to recognize how can I still connect the idea of being around children, supporting women, especially coming from such a large household. I had so many sisters. My parents are the eldest of their siblings. So it was also like the hub of the family. Everybody came to hang out here. Everybody brought over their kids, and there was always babies around me, right? So there was something about that experience, that connection of always having babies in my life, and wanting to do that for a living, wanting to do that for just forever. And always, I was always the family babysitter. I would steal my little cousins and put them to sleep. And there was always this like running joke of where's the baby? And people would assume, oh, Jasmin probably has the baby, and they're probably asleep. That's what everybody
Wow.
always assumed at the family parties, right? Because I'd have the babies and I'd rock them to sleep. And I was very little at that time. And so, I went to school right out of high school. I went to school for business administration with an emphasis in accounting. And I had a regular cubicle job. And, I had a little bit of an anxiety attack where I'm like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, and at that time I was only 21. And it was very much of like, I have to do something that I truly enjoy in order to be able to work for the rest of my life. Right. And in that process, I pulled back into those memories of like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, my grandma had 12 children. Okay, my lineage, my people did this. How can I do this for the rest of my life? Right. What kind of work can I execute that is related to this industry? And that's when I learned about doula work. And the word doula is a very new concept, um, a few generations old. In the Mexican culture, it's actually not a title that exists. It's not understood in a cultural context. And so I had to do a little bit of research of like, what would a doula do and how can I show up for my community to be able to do this work, right? And the way that I felt like I could kind of step into this world was through massage.
Hmm.
And so I actually, after I went to business school, I went to school for massage. And when I went into massage, I went in with this idea of like, massage therapists make a lot of money. I just had this like business mindset of like, this is where I need to be, right? So I went into school, and then when I started learning about prenatal massage, that's where it all really clicked. This is where I need to be. And that really led me down to doula work and even to midwifery, right? And although I'm not a midwife yet, maybe one day I will be, but I started off as a massage therapist specializing in maternity massage. So pregnancy, fertility, postpartum, and that included losses. And my family actually went through a very big loss. One of my sisters lost her baby at about 6 months of pregnancy, and it really impacted our whole family. And that actually happened while I was in school. And so while I was in school for massage, and so when that experience happened, it like really pushed me even further. Of like, there's more that I could do. I just need to know how to do it. And I need to be able to show up for my sister in a better way. And because this was such a common experience, and learning how common this experience was, it pushed me just even further of like, okay, we're going to do this head on and do this full time and figure it out. So I really took a lot of classes, did a lot of trainings, and really came from the perspective of the Mexican cultural practices, because something that is not even taken into account when we receive traditional Western medicine care, you have your OB and you go to the clinics and all of these things. They don't pay attention to the spiritual aspect of this experience. They're only looking at the physical science part of it, right? Which is, of course, a huge part of it. But we are so many layers. There's so many layers to our experiences, that being able to understand how this experience impacts your body, mind, and spirit can really influence how you walk away from that experience. So it's been 10 years now
Hmm.
that I've
Wow.
been doing this.
How, how interesting that the path through massage got you here. And I talked to a massage therapist earlier today, and it wasn't just about
Yeah.
massage. We were talking about the spiritual side of things and the exchange of energy
Mhm.
when you're working with somebody, and how being in the moment to support them, really connecting with that person. Yeah, it's about, muscle movement, whatever the goal of the massage is, but there's so much more going on there. You mentioned midwife. What is the difference between a midwife and a doula?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you for bringing that question up, because there's a big difference. So now that we have the doula roles, the doula is the person that supports with education, information, comfort measures, and quite literally holding your hand through the experience. Whereas the midwife also does those things, but they primarily focus on the medical side of things. So they're checking in on mom's health, baby's health. They're doing all of the medical things, where they can take, depending on the type of midwife there is that they are, because there are different types of titles, right? Just like we have different types of nurses who have different, certificates, different education, different degrees. It's the same concept with midwives. So they have, depending on the type of midwife that they are, they may have access to medication. They may be able to provide you an IV. Midwives do not do surgery, right? Where an OBGYN is a surgeon. They are able to do like a C-section, right? Where a midwife does not. They are able to check all of the vitals, do all of the medical things, and a doula doesn't do any of those things. They are never checking in on how's the health of your baby, how's the health of mom. We're really there for more of the mental, emotional well-being, not necessarily the physical health. We do touch on like movements and stretches and positions, but not in the point of like of medical things.
I don't want to run out of time, so I want to make sure we get to the journal. Tell us about this wonderful journal that you're offering.
I'm so excited to share this journal. I've actually been working on it for years, and I finally finished it. This is a pregnancy journal with doula guidance based on Mexican traditional practices. And the reason that I created this journal was because I would see time and time again that my clients had no idea where to start, when to create their OB appointments, or to even understand what options they had in general for their maternity care and for their postpartum care. So I put this together with all of that information in one place. So it is a pregnancy journal that walks with you week by week. It has reflection pages, and it also has milestone reminders. It talks about when to share about your pregnancy and this stigma around don't share it too soon because you don't want to make other people uncomfortable, but then understanding the miscarriage rates and how a lot of families go through these experiences by themselves because there's this taboo around sharing too soon, right? So I have a lot of reflection pages like that throughout the journal where we talk about, sharing about your pregnancy, choosing to do a gender reveal or not. There's a very few couples now that decide to wait to have a surprise when the baby's born. A lot of times, like gender reveal parties have been made very, very popular. So there's a little excerpt talking about that. And if you choose to do a gender reveal and what that looks like, you also have a space to understand ultrasounds, when to expect them, what do they mean, what do they do, what are some that you might really want to get, and some that are more optional, right? Also understanding the difference between doulas, midwives, and nurses, understanding the different options between home birth and hospital birth, weekly reminders of self-care, when to get a massage in your pregnancy, when to maybe connect with someone for maternity photos or lactation consultations. And my favorite part towards the end of the journal are your checklists. If you need a hospital checklist, the basic things that baby needs, your birth plan, and also your postpartum checklist. What are some things that you're going to need at home for your recovery, and how to kind of set them up in your space to have an optimal experience. It's 160 pages, and it is my absolute favorite. It supports every aspect of the pregnancy experience. And I feel like it covers all of the foundational pieces that somebody might need, especially with their first baby, just needing that journal to kind of guide them through the experience and remind them, because pregnancy brain is very real and sometimes people can be forgetful.
Oh my gosh, I knew this was good. I didn't know it was that good. You offer support as a doula, but this journal offers support in so many ways. I thought it was just a few things. This is the go-to guide. and I'm going to add here, as a digital download, so affordable for the cost of going to a restaurant and having a average restaurant, by the way, and having an entree and a beverage. That's what you're going to pay. And this is not only the setup for the pregnancy, the birth, but also it's a keepsake that you'll have forever. Wonderful. How do we connect with you? If somebody's got some questions about what you offer, if they want to check out the journal, what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. I have everything on my website, oxomohco.com. And I am also very active on Instagram, just at Oxomohco. And because it is a native word, it is not spelt the way it sounds. So for those listening, it's spelled Oxomohco. So you can find me at that handle on all the platforms: Instagram, Facebook. My website is under this. And yeah, anybody can reach out to me, and that digital download is available for you to just click the button and get instant access.
And once again, Oxomohco.com, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So funny. In town, there's a wonderful Mexican restaurant. Love the place. Jose's the owner. I go there quite often. And I still have to
Yeah.
stop before I say the name. It's Ruta Hawaka. And it's spelled
Oh, yeah.
nothing like it looks. Jasmin,
Yeah.
thank you so much for today. All this insight. There's so much more to dig into next time we get together, and looking forward to it. Thanks again.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.